All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And this is going to be an exciting day. This is a super fun one for me, and I'll explain in just a second. But listen, it's Friday, April 14th, 2023. I have an amazing guest. This is Jessie Blois. She is a mindset coach, business consultant, business owner, podcast host of Power and Persistence, qualified orofacial myologist, and speech language pathologist. Most importantly, she is also a wife, mother, and self-care advocate. Jessie owns Fox Therapy Services located in Westlake Village, California. It was through the process of growing her own business that Jessie firsthand learned about the challenges involved both professionally and emotionally. These experiences revealed to her next and current passion, working with women and business owners on their mindset, as well as their personal discovery and growth. Jessie believes that it is only when we are showing up as our authentic selves that we are truly able to elevate our life and business. I love the intro. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is exciting, guys. Jessie and I have a long history. I knew her as Jessica Fox at T.O. Westlake Karate Studio back when I first started teaching martial arts professionally. And she was one of the students that I helped along her way to black belt. And I had some private lesson time with her, which is always my favorite part of teaching and training, is having that relationship. And then over the years, she came back, brought the kids to the karate school for a little while, and we've stayed in touch. And I think that that's pretty unique for like 30 plus years. We have this on again, off again relationship. So I'm excited to kind of go back in history. I know you had me on your show, and I really enjoyed having the opportunity to tell my story. But now I have the opportunity to allow you to tell your story. So I want to kick things off by just letting you kind of give everybody a little bit more background. People like to hear where you grew up, what you did as a kid, what family life was like, and then we can dive into all this professional stuff.
Okay, yeah. First of all, it's such a trip getting to do this together now, because when we first met, you were so much older than me, right? You were the older adult that I looked up to, and now all of a sudden we're the same age. Life's so crazy that if you would have told me back then what we would be doing now, it's wild. And I love how life turns out. So it's great. Yeah. And I'm so happy to be here. You said it. I grew up in Thousand Oaks. I started martial arts when I was 8 or 9. That's when we met. I grew up, my parents were married, and then at 13 they divorced. And so I had a childhood in a household with married parents and teenage years with separated parents, both really involved parents. I'm the oldest, which I think says a lot about who I am. And I was an athlete. So I grew up just really type A, really into just trying to be successful and do my best. And I think that's carried through. And I think it's my a good quality of mine. And it's also been a detriment trying to always be successful. But it's led me to where I am now.
Yeah. Now, when your parents separated, that was around the time that you earned your black belt. Is that right? Was it pretty close?
That must be, yeah, you're right. Because I think how long are 3.5 years typically it takes. Mm-hmm. And they separated when I was 13. So yeah, it must have been just around that time. My brother was born when I was 12, mm-hmm. and they split up when he was 18 months.
Yeah. Now what was that? You said you lived, your young childhood life with married parents, and then grew up throughout your teen years with separated parents. How did that affect you, and what was that like for you growing up?
It impacted me a lot. It's completely different mm-hmm. life. It wasn't necessarily an amicable divorce. So I think, honestly, I really have many more memories from 13 on than even before. And my dad's still in the house I grew up in. My mom had to move every couple of years. I think I got that bug from her. We've moved quite a bit. And it was more disruptive, to be honest. I was a really opinionated teenager, and if I didn't like the way something was, I still to this day I'll make a change. So there was a big chunk of it where I just lived with my dad, and I wouldn't say it was great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, I've taught martial arts for a long time, and I've been around kids that have had the married childhood life, and then I've been there for a lot of kids that have gone through parents have gone through divorce, separation, all the challenging things that come along with that. Fortunately, what I love about martial arts is that they have this solid core of people to, like you said earlier, to look up to
Hmm.
have the male or female role, depending on which one may have been lacking
Hmm.
at that time. But really just kind of that second family. I mean, that's for me what martial arts always was as a kid growing up. It was like this second family of all these, I wouldn't even say cousins, like that just felt like brothers and sisters hanging out, playing all the time. And so, but I see it, and I see how it changes kids. It changes their outlook, and sometimes you get forced to choose one way or the other, and if it's not real cordial, that just adds a lot of stress in your life. So now, as a married woman now,
Hmm.
with kids of your own, what kind of things go on through your mind as you're parenting your children, as you're relating to your husband,
Yeah.
looking back at your childhood?
My parents, or sorry, my kids actually, I think just in the past year or two, learned what divorce is because now they're noticing if they have friends that parents
Hmm.
aren't married. So anytime my husband and I have a conversation that seems a little bit more intense, I mean, I guess the other thing to say is my husband and I own a business together. So if we have a conversation about the business, I assume our voices are more serious. So it's constantly like, are you fighting? Are you
Hmm.
arguing? My daughter asked me that this morning. We had a change happen in our business yesterday that we're trying to figure out. And we were talking about it this morning, and our tones, I guess, changed. And she's like, are you arguing? Are you going to get divorced? They asked us that all the time. And we've never discussed divorce, but I think it's something that kids these days, especially coming post pandemic, are really nervous about. I think it's really important that they can see us have conversations or say like, yeah, we got in an argument, not that
Hmm.
they need to hear what the argument's about or be a part of that, but saying like, you can have arguments and you can work through it, and you
Hmm.
can, it doesn't mean a relationship's ending. I think for me, I really want them to know what healthy disagreement looks like, and
Hmm.
that it doesn't mean the end of something, but that mutual respect is really, really important, and to learn how to have positive conflict
Hmm.
so they know what positive, productive conflict looks like. And there's not pointing fingers or name calling or anything really negative. I think as in the past couple years, I've done a lot of boundary setting with members of my family. And I think that's been a harder thing to maneuver and explain to my
Hmm.
kids.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that you probably keep your kids away from social media for quite a while, based on what you just said, as far
They
as
ask me all the time for their own phone, and my friends get to watch TikTok, and we're like,
yeah,
we do not care. Like, you
right.
can keep this up. You are not changing our minds on this one. My daughter's even watching Fuller House, like the sequel to
Hmm.
Full House. And I
Yep.
remember Full House being just really sweet. And the stuff she's imitating, I'm like, this is not appropriate. Even like TV shows are just, they're not the same.
It's pretty intense. My children are now adults, which
Yeah.
is crazy for me, 18 and 21. But even as they were coming up as teenagers, and even younger than that, there's a lot of adjustments that my wife and I had to make to be able to parent them in this, let's just call it like new age, whatever.
Hmm.
Because my parents tried to parent me, I think, the way that their parents parented them.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of things that I felt like we do as parents because our parents did it. And I started to realize some things that had to change. Fortunately, I had a very good experience with, how martial arts, how we raise kids in the karate school. So I was able to translate a lot of that because, going back to my child, my parents are actually still married. But talk about, positive conflict resolution. I don't know that it was always positive conflict.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, I mean, man, my dad was in construction, and times were either really good or not very good at all. And, those stresses, come up, being self-employed just in general, there's a lot of stresses that come along with that. And, it was, I don't know. I think sometimes you learn what to do by watching people, and you also learn what not to do.
Absolutely. And I don't want to say that divorce is a bad thing. And I don't think my negative experience was because my parents split up. I think it was because, in my opinion, even though I think they did what they thought they needed to do for us, it was still a lot more about them than us in that time, them finding their happiness. But I honestly think we would have been better off if they split up sooner.
Wow.
So, I mean, we wouldn't have my brother. So I think there was a purpose to it, but I don't think they should have been together for as long as they were. They're not a good match.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the sports. You're an athlete as you grew up, as you said, right? Obviously, we met through you doing martial arts, but what other sports did you play, and how competitive were you as an athlete?
I played soccer. And I think you know this. I don't know necessarily how competitive I was, but I know how competitive my dad was. And I think I wanted to please him. So I was that competitive. I don't think I was like ride or die, my day's ruined if I lost. I think I've always been more competitive with myself and seeing what I can do and what I can accomplish, and feeling like I need to push myself and do more. I don't think there's been many times in my life where I was like, I reached it, I did it, I'm cool, I'm good. It's always like, what can I do next? So I think
there's that type A.
So type A.
Right. What's next? It's not enough. I got to do more. What can I could do better. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I remember your dad being so engaged in your private lessons and your martial arts training. We always had conversations like, just make her tough, make her tough. I remember him wanting that so bad for you, which as a father now, having my daughter go through and earn her black belt, earn her second degree black belt. It was so important to me that she do that. And I know that your dad wanted that for you, but like, I could see that
I think it's important though to also say to your kids, what do you want for yourself?
Right. Yeah, no, for sure.
And I think that was the missing part. Like, I don't know, like if I would have wanted to dance or do gymnastics, or all I knew at that time is I wanted to make my dad happy.
Yeah.
And these were the things that he thought were best for me. And that's what I did. Now, do I think he was ill-intentioned? Not at all. I think he did it purely from so much love for me. But now, my son's all in on soccer. He doesn't want to do anything else. But if he came to us one day and was like, I want to do whatever besides tackle football, I'd be like, let's do it.
Let him do football. Let him do football.
That's my thing. But and my daughter's all in on dance.
Right.
All she wants to do. But we keep presenting them like, do you want to try lacrosse? Are you sure you don't want to try soccer again? Or whatever their passion is, I will let them decide. My big thing is we will give it 110%. Because I want them to be successful. I want them to be busy with something in high school. We don't need to entertain ourselves. They need to have a focus. But for me, it's really important that they get to choose what that focus is.
Yeah, I see that, a lot in the parents that I interact with on a regular basis. Again, with my kids, I had pretty much one non-negotiable. I think we all know what that was, right? But I was like, other than karate, play baseball, and we, like you, we were all in. Like as soon at 4 years old, we were all in for baseball, and he played and played and played. And then it got to a point where he's like, I just don't love it anymore. Now he played for 10 years, of course.
Mhm.
And I would never let him, I never ever let either of my kids in the middle of a season
Nope.
ever stop playing. But like sports in general, soccer, baseball, those kind of sports, they have seasons, right? So it's a very easy start and stop. When you start talking about dance or karate and gymnastics, those three sports are a little bit different because they're year round, they're all the time. It's not like there's a start and a stop. So I'm very goal oriented and goal focused. So it's like with my daughter, she got her black belt, and I said, are we going to do second degree? And she said yes. And I remember the last 6 months of her testing for second degree was absolutely terrible. She hated every bit of it. And I said, we already set a goal. I said, you're getting to that goal. And when you get to that goal, then you could go do something else. So
I
that was
stopped
it.
after
That was
my
important.
second degree.
I know.
That's when I burned.
But you got there.
What?
But you got there. That's
I
that's
did. I got there.
You said you were going to do it.
Really fun thing to say to my kids, and they go, "No, you didn't." They don't believe me.
I was there.
I showed them pictures. I proved myself. I still have it, actually. I have my belts. But yeah, I think, for Adam, my son, I think sports and school and all these things, it's not just about learning the sport. It's about the life lesson, especially as a business owner, having different types of employees. You see people's different value systems and work ethics. And it's a huge eye opener for my husband and myself to be like, who are we raising to go out into this world, right? Like, who do we want them to be? So our son, we just switched his club soccer team, and we definitely took him along as part of the decision-making process about, is this a switch that you want to make? And we decided for a variety of reasons it was a good switch. But even though he's really social and usually blends really easily, he's a little bit struggling with this team. A lot of the kids go to school together and do track together, and he's a little bit trained, and they've played together for years, and he's the new guy. And he came home really upset a couple weeks ago. And me being the mom that I am, I did contact the coach and be like, I just want to let you know what's going on, and if you have any insight for me. But Adam doesn't know I had that conversation. And our conversation to Adam is, this is life. You're going to have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You're going to have to try out, interview, do things that make you nervous. You're going to have to be the new guy, and you're not going to quit.
Right.
So it's not just about his soccer skills. It's about all the life skills that he's getting with this. And for my daughter in dance, she has to try new things all the time, and she has to be on a stage, and she has to present herself. And they're actually really strict in dance, much more than sports.
Yeah.
And at first that was a little overwhelming for her. But we don't quit. The only thing I didn't know, because I never danced, about dance is the cost.
People say karate is expensive.
No.
Try again.
I thought she wanted to ride horses, and I was like, let's try something else. Like, I thought I was saving money. No, I don't think I was. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Ben and I always say, if that's where all our money goes, into developing them into successful, happy people, it's money well spent.
Oh, 100%. And you're right. Dance is one of those things where you don't realize, and you can do anything, whether it's dance, gymnastics, martial arts. I mean, you could do it on a lower level, but when you do that, what does that set them up for later? Does it set them up for striving for excellence, or does it set them up to just do the status quo and be average? And, and I mean, so you have these discussions with your husband. I know I have these discussions with my wife when we have chosen activities for the kids and gotten them involved in things, because it is about the, the long-term goal and the long-term benefits that come out of it. Whatever the activity is, there are a lot of life lessons that come out.
And it's also when you put them on the club team, or she's on competition team for her dance, you're around other families with similar mindsets and goals for their own children. So then I'm really comfortable being like, yeah, they can go play at this house, and yeah, they can be exposed to this family's values, because I feel like-minded, and the fact that like we're investing in our children, and we want happy, successful, well-rounded children. Right.
Now, have you experienced, because one of the things that we experience in baseball, when you talk about surrounding yourself by like-minded people, surrounding yourself with people that are goal-oriented, and, when we started playing baseball, I mean, I literally, no joke, had kids at 5 years old that the dads were already talking about scholarships. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what in the world? And then you end up feeling like sometimes when you're in that situation though, that you're keeping up with the Jones, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're constantly trying to keep up. And I definitely had that phase of my life. And that was probably one of the hardest times ever, because going back to your opening, talking about being your authentic self,
Yeah.
when you're following the pack and not really staying true to yourself, that
Mhm.
really causes some conflict internally that makes it really hard, really hard. Have you faced any of that yet?
No, I don't think so. Adam just moved to a more competitive team. So I know one of the kids, we're just getting to know the families, but one of the kids
Mhm.
will go and train in Spain. So these kids are 10 and 11.
Right.
Um, but no, we haven't. My daughter's at a dance studio that the owner is very intentional about the dynamic, and it's a really beautiful outlook that she has. So I don't think, even though I put them on the competition track, I don't think I've chosen the more competitive studios. I don't know a lot about this team, but I've heard great things.
Mhm.
I really like the coach. I think it'll be okay. But I can say that I've spent so much of my life feeling like I needed to keep up with the Joneses, whether it was financially, material items, the way I looked, whatever. That I'm really sensitive to that now. And I'm really into teaching my kids that that's not what we do,
Mhm.
right? Especially we're raising our kids in Agora Hills, and it's a beautiful town, but we're never going to be at the high end of their friends, right? We're not at the low end. There is no real low end in any of our towns. I love taking my kids into LA, into the city, and being like, you need to like check yourselves and be grateful when they start
Mhm.
acting a little entitled.
Mhm.
I like to check that real fast. But they're always going to see people around them with more or better. And it's a really good humbling experience for them. Adam moving to this other team definitely doesn't feel like the top guy on the field. And it's a different experience for him, but it's necessary
Yeah.
because academics come easy to him, sports come easy to him. So it's kind of checking him.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your sports experience and what your goals were. So you played competitive soccer
Yeah.
and you played through high school as well, yes?
I stopped after my freshman year. I made the
Okay.
decision that I didn't want to do it anymore.
Okay.
And I think if I had found more joy in the sport, it would have been great I wish I had had something like that through high school. So I think that might be a big motivating factor for me, that my kids find something that can carry them through.
Hmm. And when you were in high school, did you have a set of goals that you wanted to reach, when graduating high school? Were you, focused on college and what college you wanted to go to and what your major was going to be? What were those decisions like for you?
Yeah, I always thought I would go to a UC. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with kids, and I knew I did not want to be a teacher. Those were the two things I knew.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I got into school right out of college, and I last minute decided not to go. My brother was really young, and I just felt really, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to be away from everybody
Mhm.
and everything. So I did city college for a couple of years. And it was during that time that my dad had a customer whose daughter was in this profession called speech language pathology. And he came home and he told me about it. And that's when I learned more about it, chose that major. Those majors are only at state schools. So I ended up going to Chico State.
Mm,
And I think it's all meant to be because that's where I met my husband.
nice. Now,
Yeah.
what was the college experience like for you?
The best. I think it's so cliche. Everyone says, oh, it's the best time of your life. And I was just like, oh my, these cliche, oh, kids grow so fast and college is the best time of your life. But it was for sure the best time of my life. I mean, in different ways. It felt like
Mhm.
being at summer camp for 6 years
Wow.
because I did grad school up there too.
Wow, good for you. And were you in a sorority? Did you make a lot of friends? What was your
Yeah.
connections, professional connections for
Yeah.
later?
I was not in a sorority. It's not really my thing, but I lived with 3 other girls and we had the best time. Our neighbor was my husband. He lived with 3 other guys. So we all hung out and there was one other house and we all spent so much time together. And then there was a volunteer organization that was really big on our campus called CAVE, Community Action Volunteers in Education. So we were a part of that.
Okay.
Our whole time up there. So we had a lot of friends through that. And we loved it because it was all about picking different ways in which you can be giving back to your community during your college experience. And then after undergrad and grad school was internship. So I was in schools, I was in private practices, I was in hospitals. And then for jobs, I always worked. So I was a nanny for an amazing family for years up there. And I worked at Starbucks.
Nice.
Until I started nannying for this family. Yeah.
Now, what made you come back to the Conejo Valley?
I never thought I would, to be honest with you. Ben, so when I was in grad school, Ben started working. So he ended up getting a job down in Glendale. He actually lived with my mom while I was still up in Chico. And then being type A, and I don't recommend this to anybody, I graduated from grad school in May, got married in June, and went to work in July. Like, live, like, go on a trip, like, enjoy your partner. Like, you don't have to do it all, but that's what I did.
Yep.
And then we really missed our friends from school. So after a year and a half down here, we moved back up to the Bay Area. And I got a job at a school and I had the most amazing time. And Ben got a job at a firm in the city and fell in love with it. And we really thought we were going to stay up there forever. And I got pregnant with our first and had him and had very severe postpartum depression. And within 3 months of his birth, I was not doing well. And I just said, I have to go home. And poor Ben didn't really have a choice. Later in life, I found out about, the resentment and the shock to him, but I wasn't thinking straight. And we moved back to Southern California because I needed my mom in a support system. Mm-hmm. And then once I started Fox Therapy Services, you can't just pick up your business and take it anywhere. Right. So here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, well, first of all, you talked about the type A, like you did these 3 things in a row. Like the first thing that came to my mind was like, I remember my wife graduated college, walked her graduation. She tested for her black belt within a week or a couple of days. And then we got married almost immediately, like all within this short period of time. So
yeah, it really takes away from like enjoying each one as a separate entity.
It's kind of crazy. It was all a blur for sure. But so you move back here and well, tell me a little bit about, what it's like. I mean, as a man, I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. It's good to understand what postpartum depression's like.
Yeah.
It's the scariest shit in the world. What I was dealing with every day at 4 p.m. My anxiety was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I was having a really hard time breastfeeding, and everyone was involved. I had to stop doing that just for my own mental health. And my son he had a lot of digestive stuff going on. It was just bad. And Ben had to go back to work and my mom was up and down, but my thoughts weren't my own. My feelings weren't my own. And I just did not feel, I wasn't me. Mm-hmm. I was really just out of my, typical mind. And it was really, really hard until I was able to feel really held and supported by my family. We moved down and lived in my mom's house for a little bit until we found a place to live. And not that the postpartum just went away, but it was a lot easier not feeling alone. I'm not someone that enjoys a lot of alone time. I like it for as long as I want it. And then I want to be connected to others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a natural human nature, is that we want to be close to each other and connected to each other. And we're that kind of people. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Ben, he really likes he's more internal. Mm-hmm. And I get rejuvenated Less so as I age, but more so from being with others.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy that. Not as I get older, I want more quiet, just family in the home time. But
Mm-hmm.
back then, I really, all my high school friends who I'm still friends with were back home, and my grandparents and both my parents. And so, yeah, it felt right to come back.
And so that's what kind of helped ease that depression for you, was being around your family, being around your friends, having the support system. Do you
And
remember?
medication that I had to go on that I wasn't able to be on breastfeeding.
Mhm.
And I was really determined that this is what you're supposed to do for your baby. And I'm a huge advocate now of like, a healthy mom is the best mom. And if you can't breastfeed, or you don't want to breastfeed, or you don't like to breastfeed, I really hate that society puts so much pressure on women to do a certain thing to where women feel like they can't make a decision that's best for them.
Mhm.
And if it's best for you, it's best for your child. But I was able then to go onto a medication that would help me more because I wasn't breastfeeding the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so walk me through as things, the fog starts to clear,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
What started to change? How did you start to feel better? And then lead me into, your business itself.
Yeah. So I think life just started, like the clouds part a little bit and you start to feel like you can take the next step. I did end up going back to work when Adam was 5 months old. And I just remember crying on my way to work every day. It's really hard to leave your baby, but that's just what we had to do. So I was still working for schools at that time. So I worked for Ventura County Office of Education when I moved down here, and it was an incredible job, a great learning experience. It's if the county is providing a service for a child, it's because they have a really big need and a district might not be able to provide that need to them. So it was a very intense job. So after 3 years, I went to a district. And as a speech pathologist in a district, your caseloads can just get really, really, really high. And I think a lot of people do a beautiful job with it, but I just felt like for who I am, I was completely ineffective. I had 90 kids on my caseload at one point. And then I would go to these IEP meetings with parents and say, I'm doing this and this and this with your child. And I'm thinking, this is such bullshit. I have 30 minutes to get 6 of them from a classroom, somehow do a lesson for 6 different kids with 6 different goals, and take them all back. Right.
Wow.
So I remember coming home one day and being like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go into real estate. I can take the real estate test and I'm going to do this. And my mom was like, hold on. What if you tried working with families privately, one-on-one, the way you want to do it? And it took me 10 years to say yes to that. She'd always be like, you should do it privately. You should go out on your own. And I was like, no, like, what if I don't know enough? What if I don't have anyone to ask questions to? How do I get a mentor? But after that, I was like, I'm going to try it. So my kids were 1 and 3, and I was working 40 hours a week. And then I was seeing a few clients privately after the school day or on Saturdays. And I think this is really where my story starts, in the sense that I was hustling. I was working so hard. I remember having a conversation with somebody who owned their own private practice and she had 30 clients. And I thought, if I could get to 30 clients, I will have achieved everything. And me being me, my best friend calls me a dog with a bone, like tunnel vision. I don't recommend it because I don't know how you grow a business any other way, but I really just feel like I wasn't fully present for my kids' little young years. And that will always be something that I have sadness about. But I was working and then I got to 30 clients. And then someone else would call and I wouldn't have room in my week. So me being me, I thought, well, I'll just bring another speech therapist on and she'll take some of the clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then she got all the clients she needed. And then I brought somebody else on. And at this time, we're still private pay. So they're happy because everybody at this time in California, speech therapists could be independent contractors. Don't get me started about owning a business in California. It's not a happy conversation. And I then had a little bit more say in how I can run my business. But then people would call for services, and I would tell them how much it costs because private pay is really expensive. And they would say, I can't afford it. And like, listen, at the end of the day, I'm helping children with a need, right? And I decided I don't only want to help rich families. I'm here to help everyone. So then, listen, I made all my decisions ignorantly. And I think, thank God, because I don't think I would have made them otherwise. But I started a contract with insurance companies and we started to take insurance. And that changed everything. Now, all these families started coming in. California passed a law that I can only hire employees, no independent contractors. And it slowly started to shift things. And then the pandemic hit and everything fell apart. A lot of changes happened. But what it did force to happen is Ben was just about 2 months before he decided he was going to go on his own. He's a CPA and he was going to do his own private firm. And we just thought we can't be trying to grow two businesses at once during a pandemic. And our son got really sick during that time too. So we had a lot going on. So Ben joined Fox. And after we kind of got a little bit of momentum during 2020, the business actually really grew. First, we were just speech pathology, and then we were able to add occupational therapy and feeding therapy and myofunctional therapy. And we were able to hire more people. And all of a sudden, we have this beautiful business that I think we have over 300 families from the community in our business every week, and all these kids that we're able to help. It's a really interesting thing because I don't know all the families and I'm not connected to all the families, but the therapists are. And it's one of those things where it's like, I could myself, and I mean, this is similar to you, I myself could help 30 families, but by pulling myself back and putting myself in different roles and allowing other people to step in and take over, I'm now able to impact more families.
Well, I think this, explains how a lot of, business owners feel in the beginning. And then when they find the light bulb turns on and you find out that you can't do it all yourself. I mean, it just would not be possible. My business would not be possible without a solid team. And it is kind of weird though, like you said, when you don't quite know everybody as in detail, because when I started my business, I knew every detail about every student, about every person. And I was teaching every single class myself. And, and then I felt guilty when I wasn't doing that, because then, I felt like, I don't know, maybe people couldn't do it as good as I could or whatever it is. But I look out at my school now, and I'm sure as you look at your business, you're just like, it couldn't be better than what it is right now, and allowing people opportunities, allowing people to grow. Because I learned so much from the people that work for me, my instructors. I learned new ways to do things. I'm an old dog. I do things, a lot of old school stuff, but I watch how they interact and I go, oh, maybe I could adopt some of that. I change the way that I do things. And you're right. Business in California, not easy. Business anywhere, owning a business, not easy. But you've taken some great strides. I mean, even since we've last talked when I was on your show, I think that a lot of things have changed since then for you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I went to a girlfriend's 40th birthday party the other week, and I walked in and started saying hi to people, and she introduced me to one of her friends. I was like, it's so nice to meet you. And she goes, my son was at your clinic for like a year. And it's the moments like that are still really hard for me, because I didn't know this family. When she told me her son's name, I was like, oh, I've heard that name. I know that name, but those are still pretty bizarre moments for me. But I will tell you, my business got so much better when I let other people do a lot of the managing, because I don't know what it's like for you, but I had so much emotional attachment that I couldn't make decisions or have reactions that were even keeled, because it's like my third child. So taking a step back, I think has been not that I'm not involved, I'm still there and still really involved, but because there's a management team, not just me, it's been the best thing for the growth of the business.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely struggle and always will with the emotional part of it. I still when a student quits,
Mhm.
when a student stops training, it's very hard for me. Even when I haven't had a lot of experience with them, it's just, I don't know, maybe call it ego too, that
Mhm.
when they leave, I'm just like, oh, I feel like either I let them down or they let me down, but somehow there's a letdown there. And it just, I
Yeah.
don't know. I have such an emotional connection to my entire team. I make a lot of decisions based on my emotions that probably cost me a lot of money. But because I love my team so much, I'm willing to sacrifice for myself to give to them.
Mhm.
And also just, let me tell you, watching a 8-year-old, get out there and do their forms and super struggle, and they want that stripe so bad, or they want their belt so bad, like that just gets me in the heart. Like, and I know, like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I should make them wait a little bit longer. But nah, they'll be all right. They'll be okay. Those kind of things. So it's still very, very emotional for me in my business. Now, my other businesses are different, with the
Mhm.
restaurant, the ice cream. I'm not there every day. I don't work in the business at all. I like to go and eat, and that's kind of it. But
Yeah, but this is, I mean, the studio, like this is from
that's my baby.
thought to now. I mean, you created it. It's your baby. And I
Yeah.
don't think there will be a time where I hear, something that it doesn't have an emotional impact on me. But I mean, maybe that's the beauty of it. If all of a sudden our emotions aren't tied to the business, then that would be scary.
That's a different animal altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Well, listen, let's talk about your podcast. You started your
okay.
podcast. Was it this year or last year?
Um, just back in like November.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
the end of last year. So what made you start a podcast?
Yeah.
And you've had, I've watched some clips on the different guests that you had. And I just, first of all, I love your personality in your podcast. I like, you know, you're not afraid to cuss a little bit, right? You're
Mhm.
not afraid to be real about certain things. You're pretty transparent and open about everything. And you had some pretty cool guests on. So what prompted that whole thought, getting that started?
Yeah, well, if anyone knows of any other cool guests, send them my way because I love getting introduced to new people and having conversations. So what really started all of this is as we were growing the career, we had brought on different people for coaching, and I had some really awful experiences. I'm not going to say it's because they were men, but they happened to be men. And it just felt like this is the plan. This is what we're doing. Listen to me. And I that's not my personality. I question things, I push back. And listen, just like if my baby's crying and I hear that cry, I can tell you what that cry means because it's my baby. When something was going on in my business, I couldn't give you numbers or facts, but I would be like, hey, like billing's not right now. Like the bank doesn't look right. And they'd be like, well, no, like we talked to the team and this is right and this is right. And I'd be like, no, something's wrong, or this employee isn't working. Like the energy isn't right. Well, no, they're showing up on, and no one would listen to like the emotional, intuitive part of me. And I would feel opposition. And I wasn't wrong. I was never wrong. My gut about it's my baby. Um, but I felt squashed and I felt unseen and I felt triggered, and it wasn't good. And then I really think I got to rock bottom in the middle of the pandemic with my son being ill, and it was the worst time Ben and I had ever gone through. So like really, if I had a W-2 and I could take, family leave, I would have, but I had to keep showing up because I didn't have a choice. But I should have just been home with Adam. But I just really hit rock bottom, and I just had to look at myself and say, like, why the hell do I act like this? Why am I making decisions out of fear? Why am I defensive? Why am I so quick to react? And like, do I want to be this person? I absolutely don't. It feels like shit. I'm not happy. It's impacting my employees, my friends, my family. I wasn't even seeing my friends. Like, I had no more energy outside of the business and my family for friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just searching things out for myself, whether it be journaling, meditation, EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping. I don't know if, but there was all these different avenues to manage my anxiety and my fear and kind of really peel back this onion of like, why am I the way I am? And listen, it all goes back to triggers and traumas from childhood. And it's not to say any one person did anything bad, but it's just our way in which we experienced a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to work through those. And as the business became a little bit more self-sufficient, I just became really passionate about meeting other women in their journey and saying like, hey, like, you don't have to be alone. And I see you, and it's really hard. And I know like a mom that's growing in her career, running a business, she also has to make sure every doctor's appointment is made and they get to the dentist and all the school activities and who's volunteering in the classroom and does the teacher need a present and what's the birthday party situation. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of times for a married couple, if the dad's out there growing a business, the mom's taking care of that stuff. And for moms, it's just like I don't say we can balance it because you can't, but we juggle it. We juggle it the best that we can. And I just became really passionate about finding a way to work with women to honor their business sense, but also their mindset and their emotional components and just navigating life and becoming who they want to be. So I'm working with a business coach. We worked together for a while and I told her my goals. And she said, the first thing you need to do is start a podcast. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't do that. I'm not even on social media, let alone am I going to make one about me. Well, so, that's how it started. So I started the podcast Power and Persistence. And it's really for women, but there's been only 3 men on it. And there's special men in my life. It's you, my brother, and my husband, because
Nice.
It's more so
I'm in
my
good
husband
company.
will bring other men to the table. And I'm like, nope, sorry, like no history there. Like I really want it to be mostly about women's stories, but I just want to share their stories. And I'm hoping that when other women listen to it, they see a part of themselves or have a moment that they feel supported or heard or seen or inspired. And I mean, honestly, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm doing the best we can. And I think we all fake it till we make it and we learn as we go. And I'm in a amazing course right now for more information on coaching and life coaching. And that's just me. I'm always wanting to learn and grow and do more and figure it all out as I go. But I mean, I've lived it and I've done a lot of healing for myself, and being able to help another woman with that that's the best.
Well, and I know from experience, having done this podcast for this is my 3rd year, and I personally so I love the conversation, right? It's always great to catch up with people, but I learn, and this is why I take notes, is I learn so much about that person, but I learn so much from that person at the same time. Every guest, I take away a little something for myself. I've said many times on my own shows that I feel a little bit selfish because I feel like this is my therapy session. This is my training session. This is my learning time. This is my growing time. Although I'm just asking a bunch of questions and I try to listen a lot. So do you feel like you get just as much out of it on your end as maybe that guest gets on the other end?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have met the most incredible women and I'm constantly learning so much from them. And it's so like today I did a podcast with somebody. Our careers are completely different, but we both work with our spouse and we both looked out for mentors. So just seeing like similar paths, but how they've been the same and how they've been different and just being inspired by people. And I love the guests, but I love when I just get a message from someone that I haven't heard from in forever. And they say like, thank you. Like I'm going through something similar or, because I'm a podcast listener and I've had so many moments where a podcast has really been what's helped me through something. So I'm hoping there's something in it that the guests have a good time. My mom always said, are you going to be a reporter? when I would be like, who? Are you an owl? Are you taking notes? Do you want to be a reporter? And like, I love talking to people and learning about people. I could sit at a Starbucks and just watch people all day long. I find people fascinating. So yeah, I mean, it's really great. I love it. I never ever thought I would do it, but I think that's what makes life really cool, is when you get taken in a direction that you never saw as a possibility.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know, I've had some really interesting guests myself, and people like, I sometimes like the ones that think so differently from how I do the most, because like I can talk to, you know, karate instructors, martial arts school owners, and we just kind of vibe off each other the whole time of, oh yeah, I did that. But the ones that are like, you know, I've talked to some people that grew up in the East Coast. I've talked to several people about what it's like to be you know, a gay professional wrestler, growing up being you know, a black male in society, and in learning, because and talking with women, because that's not me. I don't know what that's like. I didn't know, you know, what it's like to have postpartum depression. But I love to learn about it. I love to hear it from that side, because I think that it helps me understand people in general better, instead of being the judgy, opinionated, you know, condemning person of everybody else, right? It just really kind of opens the perspective.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think, you know, and I don't know if I had attributed it to the podcast, but I'm really in the state of like, just, you don't know what someone else's story is, and you don't know what someone else is going through. One of my more recent guests, I met her because I started going to her for Botox, and she started telling me about her story. And I never in a million years would have even fathomed her story is what it is. And it's the most incredible, heartbreaking story. And to see where she's come to where she is now is so incredible. But if I hadn't said to her, like, come on your podcast and share more of that, I would never have known. Right? And you look at someone and you really just have no idea.
Yeah.
So it really shows you that there's so much to one human that we really shouldn't judge. And especially post-pandemic, I feel like everybody's a little bit more on edge, and there's a little bit of kindness that just isn't around as much. And I feel like we really have to give each other grace.
For sure. Absolutely. And you know, every time you say the word pandemic, my skin crawls. I just itch. I just itch, because, you know, it is what it is, right? It was not a very easy time, but you know, my podcast came out of because of the, you know, like, I couldn't teach classes, so my instructors are all teaching online. I'm like, I need some interaction. I need something. And so, you know, here we are. I learned a lot about how to change my business. I learned how to overcome obstacles. My kids, my daughter graduated during the pandemic. She never had she didn't have a prom. She didn't have a graduation, you know, walk down the aisle. We had a drive-through graduation, which, by the way, was kind of cool, because I didn't have to sit in the heat for like several hours. But anyway, you know, like, but I think our kids, you know, your kids being a little bit younger, but our kids having gone through that, they're going to have an experience that, you know, not a lot of people really will ever understand, having to overcome a lot of the things.
I kind of hate that for them, though. I'm not going to lie. I mean, yeah, they had to learn a lot of resilience. Your daughter graduated. My daughter did kindergarten. I will never forget the tears I felt watching her dance to some video as like her recess or her PE, like alone in our kitchen. Oh, it was awful. And we work with children, and in the clinic, all the kids, there's such a difference.
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to follow that up with the fact that the really young ones, though, it's still, you probably still see it too. I have kids that come into my school at a young age that they don't know how to interact with people at all.
Or they've never left their mom's side.
It's just crazy. And I feel so bad. I'm like, that's going to be tough. So there are the, you know, the pros and there are the cons for sure.
My kids got really nervous. Like, I think they're just really like, they have a lot of just fear.
Well, when that's all you hear on the news and TV and social media and from everybody in the world.
Yeah.
Everything was about fear, but we don't have to go there.
Well, I think for me, though, I will say as a parent, it's kind of like how much do I shield them from and how much do I let them know?
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know, it's a hard time for kids. It's hard as a parent of young kids knowing like I don't want them to live in a bubble, but they don't need to know everything that's
Sure.
happening in the world right now. So, yeah, it's confusing.
It is. And, parenting, like I said much earlier, parenting when I was growing up is very different than parenting for the generation in between and for how
Yeah.
we're, parenting our kids now and the next generation. The one thing that I've seen change the most that's been pretty consistent across the board, like my parents were not my friends. They were never my friends. It was always decisions were always made and they didn't really take into account like if I was going to be upset about it or not, And I
Mhm.
see a lot of parents now where they want to be the child's friend because they don't want them to be mad at their decision or upset
Mm.
with them. And you know, I don't know. That's the one thing that I've seen pretty consistently change over the last several decades, where that boundary you talked about boundaries, right?
Yeah.
There just weren't there wasn't, and the kids do know everything, and the parents tell their kids about all this stuff, and it's like they don't really need to know that because it makes them grow up with this jaded view.
Well, and it's true. And then, I mean, not luckily, like not right now, but I mean, we've employed some of those people. And I mean, for us, it's really made us like, I don't want them to think it's my way or the highway. I want them to feel like they have a voice, but they're also not on an equal playing field with us,
Hmm.
right? So it's very much, and I don't care at all what your friends have or what they're doing. Like that's not the decision this family is making. Like the phone conversation won't die in our house, and we're just neither one of us is budging. Like
Yeah.
you don't need a phone. You're not getting a phone. So I don't know. They're
Well,
gonna
and
play
if
on
it,
the phone.
go back to what you said about people, being more kind and respecting, different viewpoints. I mean, that's what you want in your family. And if another family has something, hey, I can respect that. That's a decision you made for your family,
Yeah.
but we don't have to always compare, and we don't always have to, well, they get to do it, so I want to do it. And it's like, that's not really the way it works.
And that's
So,
not how it is when they grow up either.
no. Mm-mm.
So it's just about learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, we're right there at that hour mark, and I know you got an appointment coming up, so I'm gonna let you go. But thank you for being on the show and hanging out with me and talking about some of the old times in the beginning there, and just letting us know all about your business. I definitely have some guests for you. I have
Oh, good.
several women that I will recommend to you, and I'll connect with you, and we'll talk about that after the show. But
Thank
for
you.
now, guys, I want everybody to go out and have a great weekend. It's Friday, so enjoy your weekend. And I'll be back again next week. Please subscribe on YouTube to Master Motivation Podcast. You can follow me on all social media platforms. And if you have any questions or any comments about this video, please put those in the comments, and Jessie and I will check on them later. Feel free to share the video as well. But for now, Jessie, thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Well, we'll talk in just a bit. But guys, that's it for today. See you real soon.